Hello friends, welcome to my channel. It's time to meet the incredible people who've visited the other world and come back to share their stories with us. Some of these encounters happened in the most unexpected ways, and the accounts are sometimes so vivid that they make your hair stand on end. So don't go anywhere and get ready to listen to some spooky stories today. Number 1. Hospice. Mrs. Turner was getting old. Her family decided to put her in hospice so she could spend her last days comfortably and painlessly. They were all very sad, because they knew that no one could survive for long in such a place. But the woman didn't seem too upset about it. When her daughter asked her how she felt about being taken to hospice, she replied, "I feel fine. You know, they take good care of me here and I have everything I need, but there's one thing." "What's that?" asked the woman. Surprised by her mother's reaction to the whole situation, the girl expected her mother to complain about food or something. Instead, Mrs. Turner told her daughter, "The only thing I don't like is that I'm not allowed to tell you who will meet us in the other world." "Mom, what are you talking about?" "No one can predict the future," said the woman, laughing at first and then getting mad. She thought her mum had gone crazy. The woman still didn't believe it when she heard what her mother was trying to tell her. That night, however, something amazing happened. Suddenly, the girl began to have strange visions. She saw bright light coming from the end of the tunnel and heard angels singing. Then she saw her mother standing next to the light. "She's gone," the woman whispered. Mrs. Turner's body remained in the hospice, but her soul had already flown into the other world. And now the woman understood that this was just the beginning of her story, because her mother had promised to show her something really important. In her visions, the woman kept seeing an elderly man dressed in a black suit, looking sad. He always stood at the entrance to the tunnel and seemed to be waiting for someone. Suddenly, the woman realized that this must be the person her mother wanted to tell her about. She decided to find him. The woman left her home and went to the city center, where she saw the same old man sitting on a bench. She sat down next to him and asked if he was waiting for someone. The old man looked at her and said, "Who are you? How do you know that I'm waiting for someone?" The woman realized that this was probably the person. She took a deep breath and said, "My mother told me you would be here." After hearing that, the man's face immediately changed. His eyes filled with tears, and he said, "You found me, thank God. I've been waiting for you for so long." The woman still had many questions, but before she could ask them, the old man grabbed her hand and said, "We don't have much time, let's go." He led her through the crowd of people until they reached a small cafe. The woman still had no idea what was going on, but the old man suddenly broke down and started telling her his story. He said he was a spy and had a very important mission. One day he got into a car accident that paralyzed him from the waist down. He spent many years in a hospital bed and became depressed, thinking his life was over. However, one day a nurse came to him and said she had a proposition. She offered to help him escape from the hospital and start a new life, but in exchange, he would have to tell her who would greet him in the afterlife. At first, the man refused, but then he agreed. He didn't want to live anymore, so why not find out what awaited him after death? The man agreed to the nurse's offer and escaped from the hospital. Now he was free, but he couldn't move without her help. They rented a house on the outskirts of town and lived there for several years. The nurse took care of him and never betrayed him. One day she suddenly fell ill and died. The man was very upset because he would never know now who would welcome him in the other world. After her death, he moved to the city and began wandering its streets, hoping to meet someone who knew the answer to his question. That's when he met the woman. She was sent to him by his nurse. Before her death, she asked him to tell the woman everything. The man was very happy to finally have someone to share his story with. And then he told her exactly what the nurse had told him. After listening to all this, the woman realized that she wasn't just an ordinary person. She was a link between two worlds. She helped souls find peace and move on. This is what she was destined to do for the rest of her life. Number 2. Nurse. Nurse Betty worked in the intensive care unit for more than 20 years. During this time, she saw many patients die. But one day, she had a patient who left a lasting impression on her. The nurse did everything she could to save the man's life, but he still passed away. After his death, the nurse had a vision. She saw a beautiful white light, a staircase leading up to it, and a smiling man at the top. He was holding out his hand to her patient, inviting him to climb the stairs and move on. She also saw the patient's relatives, but they were crying and didn't want him to leave. The nurse tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen. She started screaming at them, "Don't hold him back, he has to go." But no one paid any attention to her. Only then did the nurse realize that she herself was standing on the first step of the staircase. She was torn between her desire to stay with her patient and the need to move on. Suddenly, the man at the top of the stairs spoke. His voice was kind and calm. "Don't worry, nurse, I understand this is hard for you, but you have to let him go. He's dead and needs to move on. If you don't allow it, his soul will wander the earth and he won't find peace." The nurse nodded slowly, realizing that the man was right. She took a deep breath and let the patient's relatives pull him away. The nurse woke up with a start and turned to look at the bed. The patient was still there, but he was no longer breathing. She knew that he had moved on and become one with the light. The nurse was shaken by what had happened. She didn't know what to do, so she called the head physician for help. He listened to her story and said that she needed a vacation. "You've worked too hard, and it's time to rest," he said. The nurse didn't argue and took a few days off. She spent them alone in her room, thinking about the events that had transpired. She wondered if she was losing her mind, or if she had actually seen the other world. Days turned into weeks, and the nurse continued to have visions of the patient. She saw him happy and at peace, which gave her some comfort. However, she still didn't understand what had happened to her. One day, the nurse decided to return to work. When she entered the hospital, she saw a group of doctors gathered together. "Did you get my message?" one of them asked. "There's a new patient in the intensive care unit and I need your help." Nurse Betty understood that this patient was the same man from her vision. She quickly joined the doctors, and together they took the patient to the intensive care unit. But to their surprise, he was still alive. The nurse couldn't believe it. She thought he had already passed away, but as it turned out later, he had survived the accident thanks to the nurse's timely actions. The doctors were very happy to see him alive and well, and the nurse felt a surge of joy and gratitude. She realized that her vision had saved the man's life and that he had chosen her to be his nurse for a reason. From that day on, the nurse worked tirelessly to help her patients, and she never forgot the lessons she learned from her vision. She understood that death was not the end, but simply a transition to another world, and she knew that every soul that left this world found peace and happiness. 3. Shocking confession. Emma was a young medical student who was completing her internship at the city hospital. She was eager to learn as much as possible and help as many patients as she could. One day she was assigned to work with an experienced nurse named Anna. The two got along well, and Anna became Emma's mentor, teaching her the ins and outs of working in the hospital. One evening, while they were finishing their shift, Anna told Emma something that shocked her. "You know, Emma, there are things in this world that we can't explain rationally. Sometimes we encounter things that are beyond our understanding, and all we can do is accept them as a fact," Anna said mysteriously. Emma, curious, asked, "What are you talking about?" Anna took a deep breath and began her story. "Many years ago, I worked in the oncology department. One of my patients was a young woman who was struggling with pancreatic cancer. Despite the difficult diagnosis, she remained positive and strong throughout her illness. I admired her spirit and did everything I could to make her more comfortable," Anna shared. "One day, while I was sitting with her, she suddenly asked me, 'Have you ever seen the light at the end of the tunnel?' I was confused by her question and honestly answered, 'No.' She smiled and said, 'Then let me show you.' A few moments later, the patient began to struggle to breathe. I called the doctor and we tried everything we could, but unfortunately she passed away. Moments after her death, I saw the same light that the patient had described. It was a brilliant white light that seemed to call to me. I felt drawn to it and couldn't resist the urge to approach it. As I moved closer, the light grew brighter and brighter until it enveloped me completely. Then everything went black," Anna said, her voice trembling. "Where am I? Where is she?" Emma asked, stunned by Anna's story. "That's the thing, Emma, I don't know. We just keep moving forward, and there's nothing we can do about it. All I remember is that there was a voice that said, 'It's not your time yet.' I woke up in my bed and thought it was all a dream." But then I realized that the clock said 6 in the morning, and I had no memory of the previous day. I searched everywhere for the patient, but she was nowhere to be found. It turned out that she had passed away in the middle of the night, and I couldn't understand how I could have missed that. I asked the doctor if he remembered calling me during the night, but he said he hadn't. I felt like I was going crazy, and then I remembered the light. It meant that I wasn't dreaming, but what was happening to me? I didn't understand it then, but now I think I was having a vision, Anna explained, her eyes shining with excitement. Vision? What do you mean? Emma asked, still confused. It means I was able to see what was happening to the patient's soul. She had already passed on, but I had a chance to witness it, and although I didn't see her, I felt like I was with her. I know it sounds hard to believe, but I promise you it's true, Anna insisted. Thank you for sharing this with me, Anna. It's just that I've never heard anything like this before, Emma admitted. Anna nodded understandingly. We all see what we want to see, Emma. And if you haven't experienced anything similar, it doesn't mean it's not real. Each of us has our own path, and maybe someday you'll have a chance to see it for yourself, Anna said mysteriously. Otherworld, a woman once shared an extraordinary story about entering the other world and returning to tell about it. According to her, she found herself in a place full of love, peace, and harmony. However, not everyone believes her story. Many people claim that when someone dies, their consciousness simply stops functioning. Fortunately, we have numerous examples of people who have managed to return from the other world and share their experiences with us. Moreover, the accounts of those who have seen heaven and hell differ significantly. It seems that there is truly something after death. There are even stories of people who have been revived after clinical death and have stories to tell. Therefore, it is entirely possible that there is another world. Unfortunately, many people cling to their material possessions and cannot comprehend the concept of heaven. However, when people leave this world, they often mention similar things: light, peace, love, happiness, and warmth. On the contrary, hell is characterized by darkness, cold, suffering, torment, loneliness, and despair. We have countless stories about this, and you can read them yourself. 5. Penny Smith. In September 2020, the famous British actress Penelope Wilton, known for her roles in Downton Abbey and Calendar Girls, appeared on the Loose Women talk show. There she shared an interesting story. It turns out that she once witnessed the moment when a soul left the body of a living person. At the time, she was acting in a play in the West End of London. The theatre was packed and the performance was sold out. Suddenly, just before her eyes, a woman in the audience began to turn blue. Paramedics arrived, but the woman was already dead. Her husband was beside himself with grief and begged the staff to let him say goodbye to his wife. The request was granted, and the man leaned over the woman, whispering words of love. Then, according to Penny, something incredible happened. The woman's eyes suddenly opened, and she whispered to her husband, "I love you." After that, her soul left her body and flew right over the heads of the shocked spectators, hovering above the stage for a few seconds. It was at that moment that Penny saw the woman's soul. It was a luminous blue light that rose higher and higher until it disappeared completely. The actress was deeply affected by what she saw, and even 10 years later, she still remembers the incident vividly. "It was amazing. She just left. There was nothing else," said the actress, adding that she believed in life after death. Penny's story is a powerful reminder that death is a natural part of life and that the soul is immortal. It also shows that even in the midst of grief, there is still room for hope and faith in the afterlife. If you enjoyed the video, please like and share it with your friends and family. Also check out other videos and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.